Dobrodošli u COREdialog, podcast dobre prakse. Od praktičara za praktičare. Pričamo o iskustvima, učenjima i metodama koje nas vraćaju kući. Moje ime je Marko Varat i u današnjoj epizodi COREdialoga Marko Kovač i ja razgovaramo sa Tomom Richterom. Tom Richter je učitelj joge i jogičkog disanja. U ovoj epizodi razgovaramo o Tomovom životnom putu, važnosti prakse, Ashtanga yogi, disanju i zanimljivim detaljima iz Tomovog života. Pošto je cijeli podcast na engleskom, predstavit ću Toma na engleskom. Tom Richter is a teacher of breathwork and Ashtanga Vinyasa yoga, a dynamic movement-based form of yoga. Based in Zagreb, he shares his experience of 20 years studying and practicing yoga and holistic health through regular classes at Gaia Yoga Shala, yoga teacher training courses with his life partner Sandra, as well as workshops and various online programs. Tom is enthusiastic about increasing our awareness about the power of breathing and developing our ability to create more health and daily joy. In this work, he loves combining findings from Western science and Eastern teachings and traditions, guiding you through simple yet powerful techniques that anybody can apply to release stress, relieve pain, sleep better, and become the best version of themselves in all areas of life. So enjoy the show with Tom Richter, Life is Practice.
So welcome, Tom. It's so good to have you here. This is our third episode, and in the first two episodes it was only two of us. And the whole idea of the show is to have the people that we love and that we like to listen to discuss topics with us. And today we actually have a topic which is very near and dear, to both Marco and me. Mm-hmm. In the first episode, we talked about maybe some spiritual aspects of life. And in the second episode, we talk about psychological aspects of life. But in day-to-day life, we both are very big fans of daily practice and personal practice. And I admire you in that way, to put it out here. Since the first time we met, basically, we met maybe 7-8 years ago or something. It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while. In Mysore class, mm-hmm. I'm not Ashtangi, but I wanted to learn. I wanted to see what it was all about. Mm-hmm. And then I somehow sensed your passion about the things you do. Mm-hmm. It's not only work. Yeah. And then later we got closer together when I attended your breathing class or breathing course. Mm-hmm. And then later Academy for Teachers. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was the beginning. Yeah. But there's so much more about you and about the things that you do. So maybe you can tell us, give us some introduction. What you're passionate about and what you basically dedicated your life to.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me and having me on your podcast. It's definitely a pleasure already. And so what am I passionate about? I teach yoga. I teach breathing. I teach essentially everything about raising your awareness, raising your consciousness. Based on my experience, meaning how I practiced over the last 20, 30 years. Well, I'm more or less 40, so I think serious practice for 20 years, right? Like conscious practice. And of course, out of this practice then came the passion to share that. And also when you start practicing, ideally, you start questioning what you do in life and you try to shift that towards a place where you are as passionate about everything you do in daily life as you are with your practice. And so that's kind of how the whole thing evolved. And now, maybe to start at the end of my story, now I'm teaching in Zagreb, living a happy life in Zagreb, let's say, have a beautiful family, met my wife in India, but she's from Croatia, so I ended up here. And we have a beautiful son, and we have a yoga school in Zagreb where I teach almost daily, and I offer a lot of breathing courses or everything around breathing. breathing courses, breathing academy for teachers, and that's my daily thing now.
Yeah, and how it all started? I mean, how did you get into the whole thing?
Good question. I was lucky because I had a very normal, standardized life up until 26, 27. Like I went to school in Germany, had a little bit of high school year in America, but then finished my school, started university, and was very, very much on the rational path. Like I studied engineering and economics. I loved math. I loved kind of like the idea of having a career afterwards, finding a good job, like a good job in the general sense of what we consider a good job, having a good career, making money. And finished my studies like on time, like until 25, 26, my resume looked very, very nice. Like it's
straight.
Very straight. Matura, like, the high school diploma, some experience abroad, university, engineering, economics, and then I actually started working as a management consultant. So me in a suit every day, driving through whole Germany, consulting energy companies on how to become more efficient.
Imagine that,
exactly. And the interesting thing is, now looking back, of course, you can never really see that going forward, but looking back, everything came always very easy to me. Like it was almost like life was guiding me by the hand, like took my hand and just like when I finished the university, it was like, I don't know where I should work. And like literally a job just popped up in front of me and like, okay, I'll do that. And the same with everything else. It just like always kind of popped up in front of me and it was like, okay, let's do this. And that led me in this direction of university and then management consulting. And of course, from my perspective back then, that was amazing. Like, oh yeah, now I will work and it's a great job. It's a great start for a career. And I have two brothers. They are 10 and 9 years older. So they always were kind of a mentor for me, both of them. And they both were yoga teachers. Like they both started, my parents are teachers, so they were very traditional as well. Like, do the best you can, go to university, get good grades, get a good job. And then they were even saying like, become a teacher because it's a safe job. That was kind of the suggestion that I always had like hanging behind me. But both of my brothers, being 10 and 9 years older, quit their job after they also did this normal route of career path and said, I will become a yoga teacher. And I was like, what are they doing? Kind of throwing away their life. Why don't they just, I didn't really say negative things about them. It was more like, I didn't understand it until I got to like 24, 25. My girlfriend at that time that, we had a long relationship and she decided it was time to move on. And that kind of threw me off, like of my life where I didn't have to think what would happen next because I was kind of cozy.
This emotional aspect of it.
Well, when you you go into university, you have a relationship. If you don't have a relationship, if you don't have a job, you're like, okay, but where do I get one? But
the end of relationship, did it trigger something?
Well, not yet. I was, I don't know if it's me being, September. My wife now says always like, when we met, oh my God, he's like September born German. Like, I don't know if I can deal with that, So I guess there's something about that. But I was very like plain, like no emotional, how do you call it? Altitude. It was always like, I was always okay. I'm still mostly great, but I had no connection to myself. And so my girlfriend leaves me. All of a sudden, I have to kind of rethink my life in a way. And that's when I started practicing yoga. Until then, when my brothers introduced me to some yoga, it was like, yeah, it's nice. I'm like it's okay, I can do it. But then all of a sudden, when my brother said, well, there's this thing, Ashtanga Yoga, I just started doing it. Let me show you. And it was very physical. It was very dynamic. So it was not like, the typical yoga back then, like let's meditate, let's breathe, let's do some poses and then lie down and take rest. But it was more like handstands and, jumping through and arm balances and really demanding, physically demanding. But it was this connection of breathing and movement that came together, which makes you go more in. I didn't know that back then, but it gave me a purpose every day. Like, okay, I will do this 1 hour practice. There was this guy on a DVD that I was following that my brother gave me. And it was like, this guy was like 50. He could do everything. He was floating over his mat. He could do nothing I had ever seen. And he was like old and doing it. I was like, this guy's cool. I want to do this stuff. Like the physicality of it drew me in. And so I practiced like diligently every day, 1.5 hours. And because I felt so great doing it, I did it the next day. It was not like I have to do it every day. It was more like, I feel so great. I already look forward to doing it tomorrow. And back then, if you gave me a meditation practice, I was like, that's nothing that would have triggered me to stay with it. But the physicality and the way I was feeling, it was like, wringing me out every day, like a towel, like, ksh, ksh. So I felt myself. And maybe that was also the first moment where I was really like going into my body. And because it, let's say, almost like a drug, it made me feel myself so nicely and left me in such a good place, mentally, physically, emotionally, that I stayed with it. And then I finished my studies.
Sorry, just to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess this is the important aspect, and we'll speak about it a bit later in the conversation.
Yeah.
Is that for a long time, I was thinking about daily practice as a kind of discipline. Mm-hmm. As a kind of, like militant, focused, you have to do it. This is the way, this is how it should be done. Mm-hmm. And then I would start something. I would do it for a couple of days, and then it would be too difficult, and I would skip a couple of days, mm-hmm. and I wouldn't do it for a long time. Mm-hmm. And then once it stayed, was when I really found, and I was watching myself, which things I'm staying with. And those were the things that I was actually enjoying. Mm-hmm. And then when the practice, and I discovered this enjoyable aspect of practice. Yeah. Then it sticks. Mm-hmm. Then it sticks. And then it sounds like that you stumbled upon it very early on. Like it didn't feel like discipline. It was like, I want to do it because this is interesting. I love it. Yeah. I enjoy it. I stumbled upon it in the right moment, right? Like a little bit lost, like relationship is over, after many years, 5 years, I think we were together. And like still in this finding phase of like, okay, I'm finishing my studies. I will be, a diploma engineer soon. And now I don't know where to go, what to do. And now all of a sudden this practice makes so much sense. And also bringing me out of my mind into my body. And the nice thing about Ashtanga is the way the technique works is it brings you immediately very quick progress. Like after 1 week, you are telling yourself, oh, wow, 1 week ago, I couldn't do this. And now I can go deeper into a forward bend, put my leg into some weird shape or my whole body into some funny shape, or go longer, and it's very physical, like push-ups and back bends and all of that. And so you see progress very quickly and continuously. But then also because you see other people practicing, like I did on this video, of course, back then it was different. Now you could just go online and you can see 50,000 people doing the same practice. Back then it was like, okay, I have this DVD. But I also saw what I still couldn't do. And it kept me in this sweet spot between, oh my God, it's another week and I can already do so many more things than last week and last month and last 2 months. But oh my God, there's so many new things that I still cannot do. And that motivate me to keep going. And
so I continued practicing. I got very excited about it. I told everybody about it. I mean, everybody that would listen. And the nice thing about this practice is let's say, if you would have brought me to a yoga class and we would chant some Om and some mantras and, some cozy spiritual practice kind of thing, I would be like, no, like I'm running away. But this Ashtanga Yoga is very nice because it doesn't demand that from you. It just says, do your practice, find your breath, and then see what happens. And so all these things kind of sneak into your life without even, being aware of it. Like you notice it when it's too late, when you have already been transformed in some way. Now you whatever you see, even if you don't want to see it, you cannot unsee it, right? Mm-hmm. And I even remember, even this whole Indian stuff was not really back then something that I was going for. I remember my brother was like, yeah, I go to, the big guru of Ashtanga Yoga, but Abhi Joyce, he was coming to Europe and doing some workshops there. And I was like, why would I spend money to go to Denmark to, just practice with this guy? I can practice at home. Like I was very unenthusiastic about the whole tradition, blah, blah. I was just practicing. And then, 2 years later, by now I had started working. I wanted to finally go to India. And then in India, I essentially was, now with 50, 60, 70 people who all came from everywhere in the world. And so I was now working in Germany, having this full-on job, working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, traveling all the time, lots of stress, high demand, typical career job, suit, right? And now I was in India in shorts, and sweating every day like crazy and meeting people and I had worked my ass off to get like this 3-4 weeks of vacation so I could go to India. And now I met people who were like, yeah, I'm here now for a month or two, and then I will go to Bali for another month. And then I will probably go back to Europe because I have to do a little work, but then I'm back in India, like in 3 months. And like, that didn't make any sense. Like my mind could literally not understand, like grasp, how is this possible? I knew I had to work for 11 months. And then maybe if I'm lucky, I get 4 weeks connected, holidays, so I can go to somewhere. And, if you have 2-3 weeks of vacation, that's great. Like that, lucky you. And those people that were just seeming to have unlimited resources and time, that didn't make any sense. But I knew from my brothers who had quit their jobs and now we're on this path, like it kind of made sense. And so now started this phase of, I feel a certain way when I'm in my job. I feel the energy of my working bodies, the pressure at work, the way it feels with my, like the managers that were above me. And, in consulting, it's very linear. Your manager, that's you in 10 years. Your partner, that's you in 20 years, if you stay in this world. And I just felt that it felt completely different when I was doing yoga, how I felt in my body, how I was kind of feeling embodied, versus how I felt in my job. And it just, it was antagonistic. Like I really didn't feel nice at work in that sense. I liked the job. I liked how, how I was making some kind of impact in the companies that I was working with in. I liked numbers. I liked the rational part of that job. Maybe also the prestige that came with it, but it didn't really matter as much to me. And I guess I was also lucky in the sense that I still didn't have, a credit going for a car or for a house or for, kids, where I'm like, okay, I have responsibility. Like I cannot just quit my job. And so it became this thing where I was like, okay, well, plus I met my wife Sandra in India back then. So I was like having a reason to kind of, to look that way, like what else can I do? And so essentially that first trip to India, like opened up all the floodgates in terms of like, what can life be when I go away from that path? that normal path.
Mm-hmm.
And still, it took so much effort for me to kind of say, yeah, I want to leave. Like, I really want to leave that job. And, but I did. I did finally say, okay, I'm going to quit my job.
So you were 20...
I was 28.
28.
In that moment, yeah. And, you know, like I left that relationship that I was in at that moment. I left my job. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to quit. It doesn't have to be forever, but I'm going to leave. And I'm just going to do yoga. So I went back to India. I went to Thailand. I went to Australia. I did like a little bit of a world travel for a couple of months. I did a yoga teacher training. And then the interesting thing was, you know, how I was saying before, everything kind of was just in front of me. Like, okay, here's your, that's your university. That's your job. That's your internship abroad. Whatever I was looking for in terms of my career path was just presenting itself. And then when I finally decided to quit my job, I was like, okay, now let's look for jobs, maybe here in Zagreb, for consulting jobs. So I maybe, you know, stay with that while I pursue my yoga path. And the funny thing was, all of a sudden, nothing worked in that sense. Like, no, we don't want you, you don't speak Croatian, you know, or...
Life had other plans.
Yeah, but all of a sudden, all the other things came up. Like my brother said, oh, we just want to start a yoga teacher training. Do you want to teach with us? And also Sandra, my wife, she started her yoga school that we are still having now. And it was like, okay, there's opportunity all of a sudden in this direction. So I pursued that. I became a yoga teacher full time. And of course, now that gave me the opportunity to go full on into my studies, into my practice, even more than before. And of course, the moment you start sharing it, you even learn more about what you're doing. And so from there came then, you know, the deepening of my breathing journey. Pranayama became really a big thing at that moment. And from there, the last, 15 years have been teaching, and going deeper into my own path.
Yeah.
In that sense.
I mean, this is a beautiful story. Actually, maybe we should have some conversation on this very topic. You just getting reconnected or connected with our purpose or whatever, passion, however we call it, which is usually unlike the traditional path that society puts us on.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually a beautiful story about it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expand. Do you want to expand a little bit on it?
Yeah, I would like to, not actually on this topic, but it's also related to it. But what really resonates with me is what brought you into search at the beginning. So this breakup with the girl and becoming lost in a way.
Mm.
And this resonates with me really because it also happens to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually the start of my journey as well. And
also the breakup,
yeah, because I got really depressed. Everything was great until then.
Mm-hmm.
And then the breakup happened and I got really, really depressed. And from this, let's say, darkness, I had to start looking for something.
Mm.
And then there were different practices and things that I was doing. But what resonates with me is that you found the actual practice immediately, let's say, with which you stick.
You
stick to
I stuck with it. Yeah.
You stuck with it. And in a way, you found your purpose through this.
Yeah.
And I think you were really lucky because I
consider myself
searching for it for a long time, and there were ups and downs and different practices. Some of it were destructive, let's say, in a way. I didn't find the real thing at first, but it was it's interesting, and it's something that I would definitely advise anyone at that point in time to find a practice. That's the first thing, to find a practice that you can stick to it.
Mm.
And the other one is practice related to the body.
Yeah.
Because everything else that is not related to the body will not bring you out of this bubble of whatever it is that you're in.
Yeah.
So I think you're really lucky.
Yeah, I consider myself extremely lucky. I think it's also like I deeply believe and trust in this, that we always have in front of us exactly what we need to work on. It's just that we don't always see that, right? In that way, that we sometimes say, oh no, why is this happening to me? This kind of, oh, I'm a victim again. Like, what is life throwing at me? But I was lucky in the sense that I learned very quickly that whatever's in front of me, even if it's really a crappy thing, a situation, or I feel it brings up a lot of shit from inside, that it's there for a reason. And and that's why also I'm really grateful for Ashtanga Yoga, because at the beginning it was just fun. Like, okay, I'm doing handstands, and all the physical challenges were just nice challenges. Also because it picks us up as Westerners where we are at. This super busy person that tries to conquer things. Maybe it's also, like a male thing, like you put a challenge in front of you and now I have to get it, I have to...
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, exactly. And Ashtanga in that way it comes with a lot of rules, even though at the beginning I didn't really notice it because I didn't have a teacher in that way. I was just excited about how it made me feel. But the way it's set up is like, you do this practice, the same practice every day. Don't skip any of the poses, of these asanas. And if you cannot do a pose, you are stopped. Like the teacher says, no further until you can do this pose. Mm-hmm. And so for us Westerners, it's very much feeding into the way we are used to work, right? Okay, you want me to get this asana? I will show you how you can do it. And then for some people, it's like, okay, I can do that. And Ashtanga will put another pose that is more challenging. And now bite your own teeth out on that one. And actually it will go until you find a pose. You will just get thrown at with more poses until you find a pose that you cannot do. And now, okay, what do I do now? And then it's like, okay, I can push stronger. I'm getting injured. Damn it. And again, it could be, I got injured, stupid yoga. I have to do something else. Or what made me get injured, right? Okay, maybe I pushed too much. Maybe, I have to learn something about my body. So it kind of forces you to go within. And because the focus is so much on breathing, on flowing, it supports that process. Because sometimes the process is in letting go. Sometimes the process is in pushing a little stronger. Sometimes it's backing off and just allowing it for a week or two to be like a softer practice. And all of a sudden, it's working. But because it's every day the same thing, you are trying out the different things. And that's why you need the motivation that it's like, I like this practice. So you are doing the work and you're doing now I really want to do this pose. Like you want to be attached to the outcome in that way. So you keep working on it, but you also want to learn that just being attached to the asana and being able to get into that shape is just a mental thing. And you want to let go of that. And then once you let go, all of a sudden you can do it. So it teaches you in these various ways, but also what makes us stiff, what makes us not being able to do a certain pose is sometimes because you're overthinking it, because you're not breathing, you get like stuck in the breath. So your body kind of gets stuck as well. Sometimes it's not being able to let go with the exhalation. Sometimes it's because what makes you not allow the exhalation is because it triggers an emotion and you don't want to feel the emotion. So if you have been learning from childhood on, don't cry, don't be sad, it's a bad emotion. In this house, we are not sad, we're just happy people. In this house, you're not aggressive. Be a good boy, or good girl. It applies obviously to both sexes, but with varying degrees. Like a girl maybe can cry more easily. A boy can be maybe more aggressive, but still we learn to suppress certain things. We're not allowed to do them. And so maybe, aggression gets stuck in your hamstrings. So now you cannot bend forward. There's a lot of forward bends in Ashtanga at the beginning. So now all this comes out. Like you want to go deep into the forward bend, feel the emotion. It's not explicitly said like this, but that's how it ends up being, right? Like you want to do the pose, you have to feel the emotion. And so, especially now as a teacher, I can see that so many times that people come and then they start crying out of, like, there's no reason. They just cry. And obviously, boys or men, they cry maybe after practice when nobody's watching. I had this phase for a while that, I was good with the practice. I moved on quite fast, quite quickly through the poses. But at a certain moment, when I was going into backbends, like that was the theme that I was working on. And all of a sudden, I was reading a book, I started crying. I was watching a movie, I was crying. Obviously, I could do it for myself, but for a while I was crying and all of a sudden it was finished. There was no need to cry anymore. And all of a sudden I could go deep into the poses. So it's almost like embodied psychotherapy, if you want to call it that, even though they don't call it like that, but they give you poses, or the sequence demands poses that are somewhat very intelligently sequenced, where certain things get triggered, come up, you breathe through them because you do the pose every day. You get to that pose, maybe oh, I hate this pose. Okay, I can let go of that thought of hating the pose. Oh, I don't want to feel that. Okay, I'm feeling it, I'm letting it go. And so just being excited about the practice and conquering these poses makes you have the psychotherapy on the side, if you allow it. Maybe you run away and you say, Ashtanga is not for me, Ashtanga is stupid, whatever. But if you stick with it, all that happens. And that's what I experienced.
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting. And when you said, it picked me up where I was at, and I don't think, and I guess you would agree, that yoga is not about getting into crazy poses. And it's not at the end about the exercise.
Yeah.
I remember one lecture of Jiddu Krishnamurti. He was asked about yoga, and he said, you people in the West, you don't know anything about yoga. When you say yoga, you think exercise. Yoga is not that. And I would agree about that. But in a sense, actually, when I'm listening to you, it actually brought you in, gave you you were a young guy, wanted to do something, that wanted some challenge, some physical challenge, right? Mm. But then this other benefits got in through small door.
yeah, exactly.
And if someone, for example, at that time told you, do some psychotherapy or clean up your whatever, childhood or trauma or something, you would probably say like, come on. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Totally.
That's perfectly fine. That's for crazy people. Yeah, that's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful point to have this whole body-mind relation. It's not only about the body, about the poses, but it's also, I don't know how many yoga teachers, or I'm not in that, let's say,
in that bubble.
World.
Yeah.
But how many of you guys are really into, letting everything happen, like all the emotional stuff, supporting this process in a way of not being, attached only to the physical or just breathing or something, but also supporting this emotional release? Or
well, I think there's a lot of that happening, and of course every teacher comes from a different place and cultivates that space of growth and healing and all of that in their own way. And of course, depending on the person, more or less. Mm. And of course, there's teachers who are very physical and they're just focusing on that, which doesn't even mean that they don't allow the other stuff to happen in the background. It's just that they don't address it specifically. Mm. But some teachers do. And in Ashtanga Yoga, you have a very specific audience of students. Because and we will talk about more, I think, about that later. But oftentimes, you have yoga classes, like a guided yoga class. You come there once a week, maybe twice. You roll out your mat. The teacher says, lift your hands, exhale, fold forward. You do it. If you're not sure, you just watch and then you just follow along. So there's a lot of benefit in that. You're breathing for an hour, you're moving for an hour, stuff comes up, it's great. You're stronger, you get more flexible, you bend your mind, you bring up the emotion, it's all happening. But then if you come once a week, maybe twice a week, and you're guided, whatever is kind of sparked up has enough time to be hidden while, during those 7 days where you don't practice. And then you practice once again, you get some feeling, maybe you feel great afterwards, you feel relaxed, amazing, but then you can forget about it. In Ashtanga Yoga, ideally you're practicing in what's called Mysore style, which is from the city of Mysore, because that's where Padavi Joyce, who invented, let's say, that system of practice and taught in that way is from. And there it's like a guided self-practice because everybody's practicing the same sequence. And of course, there's more than one series. So eventually you practice different sequences each day. But let's say the first year, it's the same sequence for everybody. And so ideally, you learn that sequence by heart. And maybe that takes 2-3 weeks until you have your 20-30 minute practice. And then you just always add one pose at a time or 1 or 2 poses at a time. And so you come, you roll out your mat, and now you practice. The teacher is not telling you lift your hands. They do that the first month, but then it's like, I teach you the sun salute today, and then you have to do it yourself. If you are stuck, I will tell you, but then again, try it yourself. And so you're forced from the beginning to practice by yourself, synchronized with your own breathing. And so it's immediately your practice, and you're immediately stuck with your thoughts, with your problems, because it's not really like this. But if I want to be mean, I would say coming to a lead class is like you put your mind there next to the mat, like you take off your glasses, and now you're just following orders. Inhale, lift your hands, exhale, fold forward, broaden your shoulders, free your neck, whatever it might be, you only do it when the teacher says it. While in Mysore class, you are maybe faced with, damn it, the 3rd day in a row and I still don't know what to do. Now you're frustrated. Or every day you do the same pose instead of changing it every time. And so maybe you are bored, but maybe you are also just very conscious of, I do this pose every day and every day comes up a thought of, I'm not good enough. Oh, look at the person next to me, they're so much better. Oh, I have to again ask for the teacher. Or why is the teacher never helping me? He doesn't like me. Or, oh, he is helping me again. Why is he helping me so many times? Am I bad? Or I don't want him to help me all the time. Or, oh, he's touching me. I don't want that. Well, are you saying it or not? So there's many subtle aspects that come out when you actually practice for yourself, which maybe don't come up as quickly when you only go to guided classes. And I don't even remember what you said that led me to saying that now, but
I asked how many teachers actually
So because of that Mysore practice, I think all the teachers that teach Mysore, because they have gone through that process themselves, are much more aware of all the blah, blah, the monkey mind that is happening in class. And then, of course, the benefit is I'm there with you when you need it as a teacher. So if you feel, oh yeah, I have hamstring pain, now we work on specifically how to modify the pose to not have that pain, to not get injured. Or somebody, okay, that can go very deep. Okay, maybe we can back him off a little bit, or that person, and teach him how to be more active in that pose. Or, okay, they can do everything. Let's make it more challenging for that person. Another person, it's too challenging for them. Let's modify and take it a step back. So everybody kind of gets what they need. And for example, backbending is something that is there for everybody, like a theme, because backbending is very tricky. You have to open up your heart, right? Most people are protecting their heart. because of the way we live, protecting their emotions. And now you're asked to open your heart and to backbend, which means you have to keep breathing with an open heart, with exposing your whole front, your throat, your chest.
Vulnerable parts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your psoas get stretched, which breathing and psoas opening, it's triggering essentially everybody. And so then some people get like all excited, some people get very, like all the stuff comes up. And then, okay, now my job as a teacher is to hold that space. You want to cry? Cry. Instead of like, a person is crying. If I'm your friend, I'm like, it's all good. Don't worry about it. Don't go so deep. Me as a teacher is like, hey, it's completely fine. I'm here for you. And let it out. Like, I'm not trying to get you to stop. I'm stopping you when you get injured. When I feel that you could get injured, but I'm not stopping you from facing all the stuff that is coming up. And for that, I need to be okay with the fact that you're crying.
Yeah, you
right?
have to be okay with all the emotions coming up with them. You have to be okay with yourself having those emotions.
Right? And so when you cry and I feel bad that I made you cry, I am not a good teacher, right? Because now I stop you because I feel bad about it. And that makes it a really nice practice. And that maybe is also maybe a good path backwards to my story, where essentially me practicing this kind of practice, having teachers, but also me now starting to teach and being faced with, okay, am I good enough? Are people coming? Are people enjoying it? Is also a nice process, because before everything was externally, the expectations were all external. And even me working as a management consultant, I wore my suit as a uniform, let's say. I had my company name behind me. So, I had no problem, being paid a lot of money. I had no problem selling these services. Now, all of a sudden, it was me selling myself, spiritual practice. Is it okay to ask for money as a spiritual teacher in a way? And so all of those things came up for me on my path. But then also, let's say you want to do a twist and you cannot do the twist, and you're asking yourself, okay, what did I eat yesterday? So you start, and then, everybody's vegetarian, so you become a vegetarian. Then you read about veganism, you become a vegan. Then you are like, okay, there's raw foodism. Let me try being a raw foodist for a couple of months. And then, okay, this doesn't work for me. I feel weaker, I feel stronger, whatever it is. I was always lucky to not get, I guess I was dogmatic about certain things, but I always also managed to kind of, like in Ashtanga, just as this is my example, you can be very much about, you have to practice like this every day, otherwise you're not a good Ashtangi. You do all the poses fully, and otherwise you're not a good Ashtangi. You have to teach exactly like the tradition tells you, otherwise you're not a good Ashtangi. Do you have to go to Mysore to get authorized by the source, by the teacher, to actually teach yourself? All these things kind of, made me ask myself, well, what kind of teacher do I want to be? Is that applying to me? Does that feel authentic with me? Or can I feel authentic teaching what I'm teaching, even if I'm not having the right certificate? So all that was part of the process. But then also, because I quit my job, I left that path. Now I'm doing something completely else. Well, what else? Or, now I'm the one going to India for 2 months, and I'm like, oh yeah, actually that works. I have vacation whenever I want to. I decide how much I work, I decide how I teach. I decide my own rules. Well, what else am I following where I'm unconsciously following rules just because the way I grew up, just because my teachers, my parents, my social environment told me that's the way. And now I'm kind of letting go of all these layers, or confirming them like, okay, that feels authentic. maybe 5 years from now, it will not feel authentic, but kind of questioning it, trying it really strongly, like not just saying, okay, I tried the veganism for a week and it didn't work, but more, I tried it for 2 years. And now I'm deciding, do I want to add some eggs into my diet again, or am I still a vegan? Plant-based, whatever you want to call it, right? But always trying not to be dogmatic about it. Like trying it really in a disciplined way, but not where you just do it because the dogma tells you to.
Yeah. Do you think so? Maybe a good transition a little bit towards some general aspects of practice and what practice is, and what it can bring to people. But before we actually transition, what's interesting to me is I found Mysore as a kind of self-paced style of learning, actually very beneficial, because whatever is self-paced puts me as a decision maker in the center very openly, which in essence of things, I think we are always decision makers, but we are kind of doing it unconsciously because we are trying to be good boys or good girls, and then we are following whatever framework we were put in. And when I was listening to you now, you were, let's say, a good boy in traditional sense. And then at some point you said like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I feel something else. I feel passionate about something else. But then somehow maybe a little bit of this good boy attitude snuck in. And then you were good boy in Ashtanga world, trying to be better Ashtangi.
Yeah, of course.
But when one is doing something which is self-paced, you're always faced with, I'm making this decision.
Yes.
Is this something I really benefit from? And then I think the whole world actually opens up.
Yes.
In life in general.
Good point.
Yeah, very good point. And yeah, I think that's a good point of what I actually wanted to say, that because you make those decisions on the mat, the practice becomes a tool to check in with you what happens the rest of the day. Like what happens on the mat is a reflection of what happens off the mat. Trying to improve on the mat, like, okay, I want to go deeper, and like I cannot do this forward bend, I cannot do this twist, makes you wonder, well, has the food something to do with it? Or has the fight that I had with my spouse yesterday something to do with it? And so you reflect on that, but you also have this mirror. Like, okay, when I sleep more, I can go deeper, or I feel sluggish. I'm very relying on the teacher helping me. Am I also relying on my boss to tell me what to do? Or on, my spouse or whatever? So you become it cultivates the self-responsibility. Like the practice tells me, do this pose in this sequence. But it's my decision to say, today I will do it halfway, or today I will even skip that pose because otherwise I might get injured. So it's because it's not the practice's fault when you get injured. It's your responsibility. You made a choice at some point to push stronger, even though there was already some pain. So also this, to find this, before it's like, okay, I'm going into the pose. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, I'm bending the knee. I'm putting the leg into maybe a half lotus. I'm feeling a certain sensation. I go over the sensation and still push deeper. And all of a sudden I feel a crack. Right? Before it was like, well, I did the pose and it cracked. No, you made a decision to go fast.
Yeah.
And now you got injured. So is it your fault? No, it's your responsibility. Like going away from you're a bad person because you got injured, or you're a bad person because whatever, to no, that you had lots of choices on that way. So you can find the part that is your responsibility to improve.
Yeah.
And then that, spreads into your diet and into your choices of, do I want to have a fight with my spouse now because she said something that triggered me? Is it her that triggered me, or she just triggered something inside of me that now came out? And do I have a choice to now throw it back to her, or say, stop here, I'm going to the bathroom, I'm yelling at the mirror, now I feel better, now we can talk again, right? Like, there's so many nuances in finding that self-responsibility. And like, there's this idea that lots of spiritual people in many different traditions talk about, that everything that happens in your life is your creation. And the first time I read this, it didn't make sense. Like, obviously there's things that I can choose to change, but then there's so many things that just happen to me. And then with every year that I continued to practice, and not just on the mat, but also reflecting heavily on the things that I was creating in my life, I realized more and more, no, even if somebody cuts me off in traffic and hits me, I created this in connection to the universe, let's say. Like, there's this aspect of life being co-created with you. But still, there's a reason why I created this, whatever happens. Even if I had no fault in what happened, but I created it, I co-created it. And
at least you decided to go that way.
Exactly, right? Like there were so many actually now in this process of reflecting on that heavily, and of course also on the things that happened in the past. And again, saying I was always so lucky. Like, I remember then back in school, that every day we would, in 8th grade or so, we would go and, because the canteen was like 10-minute walk away. And so we would go out of school, and then on that way, we would actually not go to the canteen, but stop in some corner and smoke and do stuff like that. And that one day, I said, I will just stay here and talk to the girls. Like, there was 2 girls that wanted to talk to me. I didn't think anything. I was just like, I want to talk to the girls. Obviously, 8th grade, 2 girls want to talk to me. I'm choosing that over, hanging out and having a smoke. And then, all my friends come back. Oh, the principal was coming with the bike and he, found us. And now we're all getting this, the thing that you have to go home to your parents and get a signature that you did this. And when you get 3 of them, you get expelled or something, that kind of thing. So, like, there was a couple of those moments in my life where I got lucky. But again, it's a creation. Like, you get lucky, but also you somehow feel it in your gut. Somehow you are pulled to do something on that day. You don't know why, but it saves your life, or it saves you in some way. And so this path of practicing it and then realizing, that happened there and there and there, made me fully trust or believe in that sense that I said at the beginning, like, this trust, whatever's happening, like, you're getting a job, you're not getting a job, you're meeting someone, you're taking a different route to work on a specific day, all of that happens for a reason. And the more you trust that, and the more you trust your gut, the more you allow the magic to happen in your life in a way. And that's, again, coming back to, why do we have practice? Have to have a practice, because otherwise it's very easy to just be in this routine of every day. Like, okay, every morning at 6, I'm waking up, I'm making my coffee. I don't even have to think. It's like my brain is hardwired already. I'm making the coffee, I'm brushing my teeth, I'm thinking about my job, I'm thinking, my boss is an idiot. Whatever it might be, you might also think something positive. But all these thoughts are hardwired, creating the same actions that create the same experiences, which create the same emotions, which create the same thoughts again.
The same person.
And you cannot change. And of course, you could even have a practice, like a training within that type of personality, right? Yeah, and every Monday and Wednesday I go to yoga, and Tuesday and Thursday I do, fitness. But it's just that, like, you go, you feel great, you come home. Maybe you even have a fight less per week because you do the yoga, but it's not a practice as we are talking right now. But rather, if you have a practice, the practice makes you soften the wires, makes you question the things, makes you connect to the emotions, makes you connect to the gut, makes you connect to the awareness that is around those thoughts that you're thinking every day, and challenges you to change. So you can go to practice every week, but you will unconsciously decide a practice that keeps you in your comfort zone. And again, in Ashtanga, for example, because the teacher will tell you, now do this pose. And because you are into it, you will do it. And you will face the emotions and you will face the thoughts and so on. And that will ideally make you also change in life.
Yeah.
And that's what we need actually the practice for.
Yeah. The Buddha said there's only one fortunate attachment, and it's attachment to practice. So I think he was right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise, at least what practice is for me, it's a, and maybe, we should also speak about what practice really means. I mean, what exactly we do when we say, practice. Mm-hmm. For me, it's a combination of some physical exercises of breathing and meditation, like those three aspects, basically. And for me, it's a way actually to step out of routine, of any kind of routine, even routine related with practice, and to get into some kind of empty space, if I can call it that way, from which I can reconsider everything with fresh eyes every day, basically. Mm-hmm. And I think what it brings to me is the opportunity to really live fully, in a sense that I do something that puts me out of this routine and autopilot.
Yeah.
Because I think otherwise the life doesn't have many chapters. Mm-hmm. And we can go on through tens of years, 20, 30, 40 years of doing basically the same.
Yeah. And
pushing everything that bothers us under the carpet, because it's like, it's okay, I can do it, but deep down I'm unhappy. And then I postponed any kind of change until it's too late, basically. Mm-hmm. And to me, what actually practice does is I bring all of this shit in this very moment, and then I look at it. And then I don't even know in advance, rationally, I want to solve it, I want to only see it, or whatever it is. But I'm just with it. Mm-hmm. And the magic happens.
Yeah,
whatever the magic at some moment is, at least that's how it works for me.
Yeah, definitely. But also, since we are talking also a kind of life pathway of looking at practice, back then, when I was considering quitting my job, it was really hard. Like starting from the question of financially. How much money do I need on my account so I can confidently say, now I can allow myself to quit? And of course, that's depending also on, back then I was alone. I was just responsible to myself, right? There was no kids or no, like I said, car payments or house payments or whatever I had in responsibilities. So of course it gets harder the older you get, because you have more that you can potentially lose. And so in that moment, I also realized, well, first of all, good that I have this self-discovery moment when I'm in 26 and not when I'm 46, right? Because then I don't just quit my job anymore. But I also realized everything until now had a natural ending. Like after 12 years of school, you're finished. Like nobody says you can stay for another year. No, you get your, high school degree and you just leave, no matter what you do after. And then you start university. And yeah, you can you can theoretically stay for 20 semesters in university. But when you get to the end of your studies, like I was, after 5 years, I was writing my diploma thesis, and then I was naturally done. There was no like, let's stay. I could stay and do a PhD, but it was a natural ending. Now I had an unlimited contract with my job. I mean, luckily, it's a great thing to have not that fear of being kicked out any day or, after the year. But what I was thinking was, now for the first time, I have to make that decision to stop. Otherwise, they will keep me on. I mean, they will maybe tell me at some point if I don't work properly, seriously, like get yourself together. But
when you say they, you mean students?
The employer.
The employer.
Like the employer would have a hard time letting me go. Because I'm in that contract. The contract is not expiring. Which is good. Like, don't get me wrong. Like in terms of labor law, we have come a long way to not not have that fear of being kicked out. Just like that. But in terms of spiritual well-being and maybe even physical well-being, it's detrimental for many people that stay in a job just because it gives them security. Right? This idea of, well, at least I have a job. Look at all these other people that are looking for a job. And I should quit my job just because I don't feel well. Yeah, but it's making you miserable every day. Well, yeah, but I still, don't want to. So I was even thinking at some point, like it's a theoretical thought, but, if we all, and it's the same, by the way, with marriage. We are in a marriage, we have a contract with an employer that doesn't end. It really puts us into a situation where we may spiritually and mentally and physically and emotionally deteriorate because we don't want to leave a safe situation. Right?
Absolutely.
And if I would have, this idea, would I still say yes to that woman if we wouldn't be married? Or would I still choose that job if I would have no contract that is not expiring? Is actually a great question to ask yourself. And just in that sense, it would be nice to have, yearly contracts in your marriage. Again, not in that sense of, letting go, whatever. If you feel a little discomfort, just leave. I'm not talking about that, but rather I'm committed to you, but every year I'm consciously saying yes to you again. Like, hey, I still love you so much. I want to stay with you. Instead of, yeah, we are married, 10 years.
I think you should do it every day, not every year.
Well, but
basically,
if you ask that question every day, it becomes that thing where, I'm not sure about it every day.
yeah.
But rather if it's a year thing, then it's like, okay, it's time for our yearly ritual of saying, hey, I'm so committed to you. This thing I would love to work on. This thing I would love to do more of with you because it gives us so much joy. If you are in that thing where you don't have to question it at all, it becomes that thing.
Yeah.
So full commitment, but still that yearly thing.
Yeah.
And the same with the job. Like, it's great that we have job safety, but still having that yearly thing of like, hey, this is what would make it exciting. Like, especially like with state jobs, where you are working for the state, so many people have like no life in them when you see them. And again, no judgment, like everybody chooses their path. But just to make that point, like, yes, let's consciously choose again and again. And the practice, like you said, and like I said before, makes us aware of those choices, that we actually have those choices, and that brings us into the now, and like, what is alive in me right now that I want to feed, and what is alive in me, maybe in terms of, toxicity coming up, emotions coming up, that I want to let go? And how can I create my life according to that? Like letting go, working on the things that feed me,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there was nothing else coming out of practice other than awareness of making the choice, I would still do it because this is enough. This is enough. Because I think that in many ways, basically, there is nothing wrong with any life path. Working in a corporation, climbing the corporate ladder, or working for government, or being a politician. There is nothing wrong with it. There are plenty benefits for society and plenty of way of expressing in all of these ways. But I think whenever we in life come to the point where we say, I have to do this, I have to be with my wife, I have to be a good father, I have to go to work. That's, to me, what I'm hearing is I'm not aware. I'm simply not aware, because I don't have to do any of those things. I don't have to be a husband. I don't have to be a good father. I don't have to earn money. I don't have to.
Exactly.
The only thing I have to, in Croatia, the only thing I have to die.
Yes.
Right?
We have the same in German.
Yeah, that's the only thing I have to do.
Yeah.
Everything else is my choice. I'm choosing to stay here with them for that way because I'm afraid, if I don't do it, of the consequences.
Exactly.
And I think with all of these things, basically what we are doing, we are just investing our energy into something because of something.
Yeah.
And at the very moment that when I'm aware of these things, then I'm making my choices consciously.
Yeah.
And maybe coming back to my story and to self-paced way of learning, I think that life in a way is, when we look at it in that way, is kind of Mysore class.
Yes.
It's self-paced.
Yeah, exactly.
And I will be stuck until I realize, okay, this is my choice. Why am I making it if it makes me unhappy? And if I realize that the consequence of changing this thing is something I don't want to face, then I will consciously stay.
Yes.
And that's fine. That's fine. But if I realize, oh wow, I have a choice, and I can face the consequence. Let's take the challenge on. Let's live life as an adventure. Then it becomes interesting.
Exactly.
Then I'm not repeating the same cycle over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Even though if I'm having the same work for 20 years, 30 years, but I see it with fresh eyes. It's more creative, and it's
yes.
And even I think that kind of mentality, when I'm faced with problems, with issues that I'm dealing with at work, with my regular tasks, I'm going to do them in a better way.
Exactly.
Which is more enjoyable for me, which is probably greater quality will come out for customers, clients, whatever I'm working on. Just this very fact of being aware of choices.
Yes.
Yeah. And actually the practice is here to help to become aware of those flavors of, let's say, emotions. Because you said, if I'm not happy, then why am I doing it? But many people don't know if they're happy or not happy because they don't have this, let's say, pause and connection with, the body-mind to understand what's actually happening in the space they call me. Because they're running on default mode. And basically, if you don't have this practice moments where you actually stop and tune into body, into, how do you feel? What is the mind doing? If you don't have this pause, you don't know if you're happy or not happy, if you're, enjoying the path or not enjoying the path. You're running like, it's done that way. My parents did it that way. Everyone around me do it that way. So I'm following the same thing.
Yeah. And there is another aspect of practice which kind of, I think, snuck into our conversation without maybe being noticed, is that the very word practice. I think that in West, basically somehow we assume that kids come out without knowing in this world, without knowing anything. And the purpose of education process and of learning in life in general is basically reading stuff and understanding stuff intellectually. And even the people that are really interested in learning and are curious about life, if they approach it in that intellectual way, they're only doing the cognitive understanding of things. And I was like that for many years, interested in all sorts of topics, physics, chemistry, psychology, whatever it was, computers. And I was just reading and understanding. Mm-hmm. And then at some moment I realized that that's limited. That the real thing basically is to do things. To do things.
Yeah.
For example, when we were kids in front of the school, picking up the fight, which we look down upon, and in many ways it's aggressive and it shouldn't be done. But simply when a kid is put in a situation or puts himself in the situation where he or she is facing the fear of confrontation and of physical contact, and that can happen in sports as well. Mm-hmm. That's a completely different thing than just reading about some battle in history.
Obviously, yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
And when we say the word practice basically means doing.
Yeah.
Doing. And that's why I think that, when we speak about yoga or even breathing, it's, if we look at it from this kind of intellectual perspective, then it's about maybe maintaining the fitness of the body or health of the body, mm-hmm. which is definitely for me a good aspect of it. But maybe even better aspect is I'm putting something that I mostly identify with, my life in my physical form. I'm putting this and I'm experimenting with this. I'm putting this on stake. And then completely different physical understanding of phenomena. Mm. As for example, it would be as if we are expanding the meaning of the word thinking. It's not about thinking of cognitive mind or brain. It's just it includes emotions. It includes physical sensations. It includes everything that I can perceive.
Yeah.
And I'm playing the game with it all because I can experience it all. I can lose something. I can injure myself. I can maybe take a hit in this example that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Which then actually brings and some kind of progress there. Brings many benefits in life. For example, a person can be afraid of staying on stage and speaking in front of people. And simply doing it, practicing it, changes many aspects about the person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And if we stay with theory, there's a nice quote by one of the Ashtanga teachers, the old ones. He says, "Before you have practiced, the theory is useless. After you have practiced, the theory is obvious." And I mean, it's so brilliant. Yeah. Right? Like you can tell someone like Ashtanga is really good, you will get stronger, you will feel all these emotions, and it's like, yeah, sounds cool. But you don't need to hear any of this. Like Pattabhi Joyce also said, like, do your practice. It's 99% practice, 1% theory. Like I have to tell you, okay, roll out your mat, lift your hands up, so on. But then the practice will do everything. You don't need to learn psychotherapy concepts or Jung or whatever it is that philosophy. The philosophy comes when you practice. Like I can teach you about, ahimsa, non-violence, the yogic philosophy concept. But until you practice and you feel a sensation about, there's pain and I'm pushing stronger, I'm hurting myself. That's the idea of ahimsa, or obviously not following ahimsa, right? Like any of these concepts, they only are concepts until you do it. And for example, I would have never gone to a yoga class with mantra singing. Singing, with other people, Om, Shanti, Shanti. It's like, it just wasn't me conceptually. But once I did the practice, and after 2-3 years, and then, everybody was chanting, and I was like, in Ashtanga Yoga, it's very simple. There's only a beginning and an end mantra, and it's just one mantra, and if you don't sing it, it's fine. But then once I was confronted with it, it was like, oh, this is such a nice thing, and it resonates, and, I feel when I sing it, how I'm connected to the whole. But if somebody would have told me, you will feel connected to the whole group, no, it wouldn't have convinced me. But now everybody was singing around me and I was kind of listening along because I didn't know the mantra. And I felt everybody singing, it resonated, like it physically resonated, not mentally. I felt the resonance of the whole room singing Om. I was like, oh, this feels good. And because I was opened up emotionally through the practice, I was like, yeah, let's do that. Let me sing the mantra. And then I started singing it and then it felt great. And so it was with everything else. I never decided because of that I have to become vegetarian or because of that I have to whatever. But it was always like, oh, this just feels right now. The practice opened me to the ideas. They just made sense. And now I was reading it and it made more sense. And I was listening to teachers and attracting the teachers that would tell me more about it. And the same, by the way, happened for the breathing practice. It just made sense when I heard it. At the beginning, I would have never done the breathing practice because just sitting and breathing, come on, that's boring. But once I was opened up enough through the physical practice that had the breathing with it, and like even the goal with it, like, because the first year I was in India, I asked the teacher afterwards, like before I left, what should I do? Like, how can I progress in my practice, in my physical practice, in my, what you see on the picture? Just breathe, he said. That was all he said. He was a person of few words anyway, but, and I was like, okay, yeah, I have my answer. So I breathed more and all of a sudden I opened up more physically. And that helped. So yeah, the practice helps you to uncover whatever you need to uncover.
Yeah. And do you think your practice will evolve and will change as you mature and as you're getting older?
It's a very
how does it change? I mean, how does it work?
Again, it's a very nice foundation to talk about Ashtanga in that sense, because, like I said, it's a very linear progression. You start with the first pose, you add on more poses. Once you can do the first series, because there's 6 series, like primary series, intermediate series, and then advanced series. Just crazy poses, like pretzel poses, all the things that you can imagine. Or not imagine, where your leg could go and your arms and all of that, right? And so you get this idea when you start. Okay, you learn the primary and then you learn the intermediate. And because it's all about the physical practice, of course, the idea is the more advanced the asana or the postural practice is, the more advanced you are as a yogi, which of course is not true. But essentially the idea is you can always add a new pose if you feel bored, right? If you want more challenge physically, we will give it to you. Mm-hmm. If you feel more advanced, because you can do a certain pose, we will find a pose where now your ego is kind of crushed because you cannot do it. Mm. And if you are unfortunate to be flexible and strong, we will have to give you a lot of poses until your ego breaks down. If you're stiff and, then maybe we don't have to give you so many poses. You will realize it already, 10 poses in, that you can just let go of the physical expression of a pose.
Yeah, this is interesting.
It's very interesting,
when
right?
you say you're speaking about yoga, and you said when you're unfortunate to be strong and flexible.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful, I love it.
I mean, it's, I heard it from other teachers who were actually also very flexible and strong and went, into very advanced postures until they learned. And, usually it happens, you go and then you push yourself stronger and stronger and more flexible, and then you get injured. You're forced to only do the simple poses. And that's where you realize, I'm learning so many things now that I'm forced to do the simple things. Just like, sit down and just be. Essentially, it's all in all the practices, yoga, Buddhism, whatever, it's all that. Yeah. But you're not ready. Therefore, breathe with that. It's still boring. Okay, do some physical practice with that. Oh, okay, still boring. Okay, let me get you injured, or let the practice injure you because your ego is pushing strongly, trying to do things you cannot do. And then eventually maybe you will realize that it was all there in the first breathe in, breathe out, just be, But because Ashtanga is so linear in it, how it seems to be advancing through postures and through the difficulty of the posture. Because if you look at third, fourth series of Ashtanga, it's really like, wow, that's crazy. Like, who can do that? And so the question comes in because you now asked about life and how the practice should be cultivated through life. And I usually tell people that I was lucky to start this Ashtanga practice in my 20s because I was young. I had a young body that was also healing. So if I injured myself, I would heal fastly and continue on that path. And so in my 20s, I was all about advancing in my physical practice, also at the beginning of my 30s. But luckily, I found my teacher who was teaching me pranayama, the breathing practices, already then. So I added that. It was not my main practice, but it was added into my practice at the end of my 20s, beginning of my 30s. And so during my 30s, I would say at some point I realized that pranayama was so amazing, even helping me with my physical practice in a soft way, like opening me up in ways that I wouldn't have imagined. Mm-hmm. So pranayama became my main practice. And, when you do Ashtanga, of course, you want to go more and more and more into second series, into third series. But the question that nobody usually answers is, well, but until what point? When you're 50, when you're 55, do you still chase more poses, more asanas? Or at what point do you say, I have learned enough asanas. I will now actually cut off some of the asanas and just focus on pranayama and eventually meditation. So I think there is, in an ideal world, and at least for me, it was like this. In my 20s, strong asana practice. In my 30s, adding on pranayama, making it more and more of an important thing. Then pranayama takes over and maybe it's the main practice in your 40s. You still do physical practice, but it's supportive. Mm. You're not trying to injure yourself anymore. Like you don't go so strongly to maybe get injured because your body is not healing as fastly. And then, maybe in your 50s, you add more meditation in and more, and that becomes your main practice so that as you progress to your 60s, 70s, 80s, you do a strong asana practice, but strong in your 80s is not the same strong as in your 30s. You have a strong breathing practice, but again, it becomes more subtle so that your meditation practice really can take off. So that's kind of the lifelong practice, right? So that, because I also heard of people practicing Ashtanga Yoga in, even in India.
Well, that's typical cycle, for example, within only Ashtanga world or broader yoga world?
Well, I think, I don't want to generalize, but I think that should be the way. Should is always a bad word, but, in an ideal world that you take care of a strong body. And when you come from, the typical Western body, maybe you you did some sports in your teens and your 20s, but then usually you get to desk work and that's it. And then you kind of recover yourself in your 40s when you get back pain. But you also cannot really get out of your life anymore, so you cannot really heal your body because it's just not your focus. You have kids, you have a career.
It's some kind of natural.
But if you use your 20s, like I was lucky, opening up my body fully, right? Like, getting the leg behind the head and all of that, getting to a full expression of what each joint is capable of doing, and connecting yourself so that all the muscles are strong, all the muscles are working together, like from the core. Because that's also one aspect you realize, putting your leg behind the head. It looks like what your limbs are able to do, but you realize mainly it's, can you keep the integrity of the spine while doing a simple pose, while doing, the leg behind the head, while doing a back bend, etc. Because you do a back bend for the first time, your weakest part will bend and create pain eventually, right? So by going into a deeper back bend, learning a back bend, you realize I want to protect my lumbar spine, the vulnerable part. You want to open your chest. You want to open your front body, your legs, your psoas. And so ideally, you learn from a teacher who focuses on that immediately, who doesn't say, oh, you have back pain, too bad, just push through, it will get better, but rather, here's something to open up your thoracic spine, here's something to open your pelvis. And so through the practice, you open up the whole body with all the emotions, all of the mental work that comes with that. And now you have that open body after 10 years, ideally in your 20s, but it could be later. But the later it is, the softer you have to be to yourself. Let's say you have an open body now. Now, of course, that fully open body, as you get into your 30s, into your 40s, you can maintain that openness much more easily than if you would start in your 30s or 40s or 50s. So you still want to work on opening the body if you start in your 40s, but it takes longer. It is not as efficient. And and that's where I come with the ideal way of you will open yourself up physically, maintaining that for the rest of your life. You open yourself up emotionally, breathing-wise, 30s, 40s, and you maintain that for the rest of your life. Because also, for example, lung capacity is one of the big predictors of longevity. So, and most people lose their lung capacity by the time they're 50. And now, you see the typical 60-year-old chest like this, not breathing well, with all the problematic effects that has. And then you see a 70-year-old maybe walking with a stick because the lungs are not creating the alignment and the muscles are not able to provide the stability to keep that openness, right? So it all goes hand in hand. And of course, if you're in pain, if you're not walking straight, if you cannot sit for a minute without creating pain somewhere in the body, of course, you will not be able to sit down and just think of the now because of the pain, because of the emotions, because of all of that. So the asanas prepare you for breathing and the energy work that prepares you for drawing in the senses, that prepares you for concentration, just being there, that prepares you for meditation and for samadhi. I mean, this is kind of the 8 limbs, the Ashtanga Yoga, right? The 8 limbs of Ashtanga means 8 limbs, are exactly that. Mm-hmm. And ideally you start early, so you start with the lower limbs, if you want to call them lower. Of course, they all come together, but with the lower limbs, preparing your body, then preparing your energy body, then preparing your mind to do all the higher limb yoga.
Yeah. And that's a great point because I'm pretty sure that it's not only Ashtanga thing, because most of the maps work that way, from the gross to the subtle. And basically when you relate although that progression to the human life, it makes sense. For instance, I was practicing Kung Fu when I was younger, and it had basically the same pattern, first building strength and flexibility, then doing some kind of breath work to keep the machine energized and, even more expressive in a way, and then going towards more subtle visualization, and then doing some inner work. And when I said to my teacher that I'm going to Tai Chi, he said, okay, Tai Chi is good, but at your age, stay with this, and when you get older, you can start practicing Tai Chi, because when you see in China, everyone is practicing Tai Chi, and there are mainly older people practicing Tai Chi, because there is that subtlety that's, a certain mark of an age. Because, at younger age, there is this strong power, body, energy, which is not all that leaning toward internal, because as we get older, we get somehow more leaning toward internal arts and internal work than the physical.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that the whole path makes sense in Ashtanga, in the elements, earth, water, fire, whatever. So it's really, really nice.
Okay, so today your practice consists of both asanas and breathing. Do you do meditation?
I do. Even though it's a little bit hard to really separate it, right? I mean, I actually practice Ashtanga Yoga, and now I also started some weight training, just for various reasons. Maybe we can talk about that later.
Next time.
But so I do some weight training or resistance training, I think, just in a more general sense, to supplement my Ashtanga practice. I do the Ashtanga practice, not every day actually, maybe 3-4 times a week. And then the breathing practice is my main practice. And then with the breathing practice, I include some energetic things and some mental things, like, manifestation things. And you could call that also meditation. Like sometimes those things go as meditation when you read about them in books, right? Like, chakra work, focusing on different energy centers in the body, focusing on creating a certain inner state, just being absorbed in the now without thinking, like, all these things. But I don't do them like every day the same. I have a certain basis, and then sometimes I will add things based on need of the day, because the way I feel, but because what I want to do the rest of the day, to kind of feel centered, strong, stable.
Yeah. And do you see it changing or evolving when you mature and when you go further in life?
Yeah, definitely. Also in accordance to, at the beginning, like in my 20s, it was mainly, I like this practice. I got to practice, I want to advance in my practice. It was all very, I was very absorbed with myself, right? And then as the teaching and, let's say, creating my own yoga teaching career, let's say, evolved, and now as I'm being a father, obviously all the things that happen in life feed my practice, and then I'm trying to feed the practice into the life. So let's say my son is saying a lot of no, which triggers my frustration. I'm seeing what can I do in my practice, in the ritual of my practice that I do daily. What expression of my practice is needed right now to stabilize that to...
So now you're building strength. When he's saying no, you're building strength.
For example, right? Or let's say, I'm worried about money. Okay, now what can I do in the ritual of that is my practice to let go or bring up those emotions that are triggering those thoughts about, I'm not having enough, I cannot trust in life right now, and feed that good thing. Or let's say my relationship is going great. What does that mean for my practice? How my relationship is not going so great right now.
How do you do that?
'In practice? In practice, well, Well, for example, if, let's say I need to trust life. So I need to feel centered. So maybe I'm doing, through my breath work, I'm just feeling already centered. But also when I lift myself up, when I create an alignment in myself, I create confidence. If I lift heavy things, that creates confidence. But for that lifting, of course, the alignment is needed. So essentially, when there's a missing of trust, it reflects in my alignment. I mean, I might not look completely compressed, but somehow it shows. So by intentionally lifting myself, opening myself, creating space within myself, that will invite the confidence to come up. Or it will bring up anything that is in the way of it coming up, right? So if there's some thought, some feeling, that will come up as I do the practice. So this combination of alignment, physical movement, and mental, emotional work, will bring up whatever needs to come up. Which, just to finish that thought, which sometimes even takes a couple of days, right? Like, I'm not feeling good. I'm focusing on feeling better. Now, throughout the day, the sensation of I'm worried for financial means comes up. Missing trust. The second day, I'm trying to bring up that trust. Now I'm feeling frustration. I'm feeling nothing is going my way. Again, that is triggering certain things in my life, which now I can work on the third day and the fourth day. And so it might even be 2 weeks until I have resolved that, or longer, right? Maybe I even say, okay, I have to go to my, healer or some treatment, or ask my wife for some treatment that I know she can do. So it's an exploration. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. And do you think it's more like auto-suggesting things, like some kind of placebo effect? Or is it also related or more related with, let's say, if it's postural, if that's creating your trust, is it somehow you're triggering your nervous system in order to produce that kind of feeling?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, right? I mean, in that sense, science can never really grasp fully because we are involved. Like we are researcher and research subject at once. And you know how it's double-blind studies is the best way, because even the person studying doesn't know who got the placebo, which is impossible if you have the study on yourself, which is n equal 1, right? Like you only have yourself. But if it works, it works. You don't need science to tell you.
It works. And you can feel it.
Exactly. And you can feel it, exactly. So is it the emotion? Is it tension in the body? Is it the nervous system? Is it your mind? It's all together, right? Like it's very hard to say, like what is the chicken, what's the egg, right? You think a certain way, that thought triggers a certain behavior, which creates an experience, which creates an emotion, which creates another thought. But at what point do you come in? Well, let's put it like this. Through practice, through the acquired experience with yourself, physically, emotionally, mentally, and how it reflects in life, you become an expert in working with yourself. And sometimes you need, or along the way, you need a lot of outside feedback because you are full of blind spots for yourself, right? So you need the teacher or the mentor or your life again, giving you feedback. Like, oh, I tried this technique because I'm fighting all the time with my wife and she's still not nice to me. It didn't work, right? And now you're trying and at some point it works and now you have that experience. So when somebody comes to my class and is a beginner, I'm just focusing on practice, physical practice, and then when something comes up, I can address that. May that be emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever. And with myself, I guess it's hard to say because after 20 years of practice, I don't even know, am I working on that emotion right now, or yes, the alignment creates a new emotion, allows me to create space for an unwanted emotion to feel it, to express itself. That, of course, is also based on the nervous system. If I wouldn't have done the practice, my nervous system would be all fight or flight all the time. Now, of course, I cannot allow a triggering emotion that creates more fight or flight, or, any of those emotions, because I'm already thinking I'm dying, that I'm running away, I have to run away. So because the practice in good times allowed me to calm down myself, that allowed me to then bring up the emotions that were vulnerable, that made me vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And now, as I work through that, the thoughts are changing. Because of that, I know I can change my thoughts. So, it's this entangled cycle, 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what I want is when I was going to your breathing course for the first time, to me it felt like, for example, the whole journey in a way started in this psychotherapy school that I was attending, but this was continuation on a very physical level, and what has actually changed big time for me was my understanding that I was thinking before, okay, Marko is kind of entity, which operates, including my emotions, thoughts, body, that's kind of entity, and then I'm simply experiencing it as such. Mm-hmm. And now when I started practicing in this way, in this particular case, breathing, I noticed that I can, for example, in the morning, I can feel shitty. I can feel whatever, foggy, or I can feel sleepy, or I can feel sad, or I can feel something negative in this way, like uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Not negative, maybe it's not uncomfortable. And then I do a couple of cycles where I extend my exhale. I take a long inhale, and then I pause, and then I take even twice as long exhale. Then after 3, 4, 5 cycles of that, my experience of how it feels to be me changes. And actually, somehow the message to me was, I'm not something I cannot influence. I can somehow use this is where, for example, I can use this in a more skillful way. Mm-hmm. Which actually then creates the whole sequence of other effects.
Yeah.
And I would agree. For me, I cannot distinguish between what's happening only in my mind, or where's the end of the mind and the beginning of the body. Mm. But it's definitely magical. Yeah. Magical, as if for example, I was a car. Something in me is driving this car, and I'm learning to drive this car in a more skillful, smoother way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In a way.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. And do you think like the whole thing? The one thing that caught my attention was you mentioned the word ritual. Mm-hmm. When you say ritual, is it only a routine, the sequence of exercises, or is it in a broader sense you have some kind of rituals?
Well, essentially, a ritual is a routine that you do consciously, right? I mean, you every day falling out of bed, clicking coffee machine, on, waiting, pouring it down. That's also a routine, but it's not conscious anymore, right? That thing that we talked about, how you go through life, just the way you've always gone through the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you get older, but your brain doesn't change anymore because you just do the same things. Versus taking a piece of time every day out of your normal life and focusing on yourself. Like essentially that's practice, right? That's what we want, or that we defined as practice, not just going to training, but this conscious effort to be uncomfortable, to grow, to get out of your comfort zone, to to uncover things that are unconscious holding you back.
Yeah, it definitely has the element of intention. Ritual has the element of intention. Without the intention, it's not the ritual.
Exactly. Like ritual essentially is, or at least as we define it here, is like a temple. In India, you have all these temples, and they're not even nice sometimes. They're not beautiful churches. Here, everything that is church looks really amazing usually. In India, sometimes they really look terrible. But you can create your own temple by defining it as a space that is dedicated for self-growth, right? Which could be a corner in your house, where you lay out your mat. Maybe you can put something or you don't, and it doesn't even have to be a dedicated place, like location, but something that is like, this is where I step out of the daily routine for growth. Like here, I'm just focusing on myself. I think that's how I kind of declare it.
Yeah,
like an anchor to the sacred. I feel it like an anchor to the sacred.
Yeah, exactly.
Space where you intentionally walk out of the default and dedicate it to growth or whatever. And the practice can be anything, but the space, consciously creating the space with intention is a powerful thing. I think it's really magical. You mentioned the word magical, but in its root, it's magical.
Yeah. And in that way, also everything can be that space.
Yeah.
But of course, it's easy, for example, if you, come to our shala, right? It's a dedicated space for growth. Like every day, people come there. We create, as teachers, that space with that intention every day. So it's almost like if I step into that space as a teacher, I leave the jacket that is Tom at the door. I'm still Tom the teacher, but I'm there to serve, to hold the space. So if if I had a bad night of sleep, I leave that at the door. I mean, of course, some days I'm maybe better or worse, but the intention is I will not treat you differently because I had a good day or a bad day. When you are going into that space of suffering, being out of your comfort zone, I'm holding that space for you, no matter what happens in my private life. Which, of course, is tricky because, a lot of problems in also yoga happen when the teacher is involved with his ego, right? Like, there's women, I'm attracted to the woman. Or, I don't like that person that comes in, so I will somehow unconsciously put that on that person. But no, I'm the teacher, and whoever comes in, I'm holding the space for them. Whatever comes out, comes out. And I'm not judging it, I'm holding it with them. Or I'm supporting them in holding it. And if they want something from me, like, give me more poses, I'm not giving it to them. I might give it to them because I feel it's the right thing, but not because they want it. Where it's like, if I give them this pose, they will come back next time. If I don't give the pose, they might not like me and leave.
Yeah.
But then I'm not a good teacher if I have that consideration. So anyway, I wanted to just say, so having a dedicated space for that in terms of, like if you practice here at home, you see, I have to clean up. The dishes are still there from yesterday. You get distracted. But if you go somewhere, now there's only the space to do the ritual. So it's easy sometimes to have teacher, to have something that is pulling you there and where that space is created for you. But eventually, obviously, you do it also anywhere you are.
Yeah. I for example, that's when you said anywhere, one of the things that I benefited from when I was going to, and when I am going to retreats in Buddhist center, integral part of a retreat is work. And sometimes I'm washing toilets, sometimes I'm washing dishes, sometimes I'm doing something in the garden or whatever. And what they taught us there is that anything basically is practice, and anything can be a ritual in a way. And it's about our intention and our approach to what we are doing. And for example, that helped me in a way that typically I don't like washing toilets. But if I approach it in that way, when I'm fully immersed into this, again, magically, the whole thing changes. I don't think about, this is repetitive, I'm going to piss and shit on this again in half an hour, and what sense does it make? But I do it fully. And afterwards, sometimes I feel as if I meditated.
Yeah. But I mean, that's essentially already
and the work
advanced.
is done.
Yeah. No, it's perfect. But I mean, that's where we want to get, that everything is practice. The whole day is practice.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, it's good to have like one place for that. And sometimes it's easy for the life to be pulled, for life pulling us out, because we have, we still have to do this. I don't have time to practice because I still have to do the dishes. And then after a while, like you say, I'm doing now my practice, and then I'm continuing my practice by washing the dishes.
Yeah. And maybe that's a nice thing about practice in general. I feel as if practice is a dedicated to something in space and time. So I do it in this corner. Mm-hmm. I do it every morning or every evening or whenever my ritual is, when I have time. But eventually, after some time, the whole life evolves into practice.
Yeah.
The whole day. It's not like, I'm doing this and then I'm continuing with the rest of my life. There is no division in it. This division is
exactly.
It doesn't exist really.
Yeah.
But maybe this is some kind of a lab where everything is focused on this. So it's easier. Actually, it's easier.
Yeah.
Unlike the rest of the life. But at some point, actually, it merges. Yeah. And, to me, that's the beauty. Because then the whole, whatever happens becomes an opportunity, even if it's uncomfortable, if I respond creatively and consciously.
Yeah.
If I'm not pulled in, and if I'm not a puppet on a string which just reacts.
Yeah. Reminds me actually of two things. One is a nice quote again. Before enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water. After enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water. And that doesn't change. It's not like you're now enlightened, all of a sudden you're a different person. No, you still do the same things every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just a different internal space that you are doing it from.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, I lost my thought, this is also the tricky part. Like, let's say in my 20s, I'm fully immersing myself into practice. I'm advancing, I'm feeling good about it. Now I'm teaching it, I feel so good. I'm letting go of all these layers. I'm understanding life. And it's easy then to say, well, it's all about practice anyway. I will just go to India, I will just stay there for, all the year, just practicing, and feeling like I have accomplished something because I'm doing all this practice. But actually the trick is to come back to your life. And now, how does that work with financial demands and social demands and maybe kids, like, for example, I was so enlightened in my head, not enlightened, I never considered myself that, but, like feeling like I had let go of so many things. And then I became a father. And so many layers that I didn't know were there, because they were, of course, in that different software of, being a son, being a child. All of a sudden, like I said things like, where is that coming from? Like, just because my kid triggered something that I didn't even know was there. And without the kid, I would have never known that this is a thing. Or without going, like, it's easy almost to go into a temple or into a monastery and say, I let go of all my all I own. I'm just I'm gardening, I'm meditating, doing what my teacher says. It's easy to do that as a escape
Mhm.
from, like,
Yeah.
no, you have to go back to your parents and actually realize that they are still triggering you, or that thing. You think you're enlightened, spend a week with your parents,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Or go try to earn some money, and now, oh no, I'm spiritual, I shouldn't make money. Oh no, this is supposed to be spiritual. It should be free. Blah blah. People will give me money. No, nobody's giving me anything. Damn it! Now I feel insecure. Yeah, all of this has to come out, but it only comes out when you expose yourself to life.
Yeah.
There was one sentence you said, which was really, really summing it up in a way. You said, leaving life to inform the practice, and letting practice to inform the life, or something like that. So basically, I feel that, let's say, while we were younger, or starting everything, we were like polishing, the tools, like working with the body, the breath, the everything. Making bringing the tool set together, let's say. And now I have a feeling that everything is merging somehow, and it's actually very responsive to life as it is. So it's not only as a lab, working your practice, but the practice is life, and the life is practice, and it's always a two-way communication with life. So this is why I feel that for me changed how I approach the practice. Now it's not a separated thing. It's not like even a technique or a method, but it's like trying to dance with all the tools I have, with whatever comes my way.
Yeah, very good point. And that's even, again, coming back to the Ashtanga idea, right? Like, you have this defined practice, and like, don't do anything else. This is the practice. It's just a method, and it takes some intelligence. But when I say intelligence, I mean like experience, to know when to stick to a method and when to let it go. Right? Like, if somebody comes and says, I've practiced Ashtanga for a month, I'm not saying that I hate this pose, but it is like that. Now I will try a different method. That's not using the method properly. You have to stick to the method for years to really experience the good and the bad and the ugly, right? But at the same time, sticking dogmatically to that practice when you're 60 and taking, like anti-inflammatory drugs to still be able to do, advanced series, lots of pretzel poses, just to, still be able to do it, that's not a good thing. Then it's time to let go and do more subtle practices, or just softer practices. So yeah, those two things, right? Like, use the method, but know, ideally with a teacher or a mentor, when to let go of it.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, I guess here it emphasizes the importance of the teacher.
Yeah,
of someone who can mirror and give feedback, right? Yeah. Maybe we didn't mention one thing, but it's kind of we assumed it, is importance of regular practice. Emphasis on the word regular here.
Yeah. I mean, I think in Yoga Sutras it says, you have to practice regularly, with consistency and effort, for a very long time to get results. And that's, I think, especially nowadays, with like 8-second reels, or you always want one result immediately, and there's like, no, I'm doing something again and again, consistently, repeatedly, always the same thing. Because if the idea is, oh, here we go again, you're not in it. You're expecting the yesterday, right? You want to be like, I wonder how this will feel today. And so, just lifting my hands, same movement every day. Like how
and
does it feel
I think
today?
that's important word. I wonder. I'm experimenting.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm dependent on success or I feel bad if it doesn't work.
Yeah, or I expect.
Yeah, or I expect. I do it. I'm experimenting and I'm seeing what happens.
Yeah. Also, we talked about this before. There's also this yoga sutra that says you want to be fully dedicated to the practice, but unattached to the result, right? That thing where you're doing it fully, you're really meaning it when you do it. But if it doesn't work out that day, or if you're not as flexible, as strong, as clear in your mind, whatever it might be, if the emotion doesn't want to be released, if you're still yelling at someone afterwards, then it's like, okay, let it go, do it again tomorrow. And
that's bringing us again to the matter of trust.
Yeah.
Because you have to trust life to do its own thing. You will do your own thing, your practice. You will put some effort in it, but not expecting the result. The result is on the other side.
Yeah.
So that's the matter of trust.
True.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to add before we close up the topic on practice? This conversation opened up quite a few directions we could go into in future, and I hope we will talk again more.
Yeah.
But do you have anything else to add on topic of practice and or some aspect that you want to emphasize? Or
No, I think all the things that we maybe haven't talked about yet, we can easily add to the next conversation. So for me, it was very nice. It's always nice to reflect with, like-minded spirits and kind of, because the whole discussion becomes more like conclusions arise naturally when we talk with each other about this stuff. And so that's very nice. Thank you so much for sharing that space with me, and again, for inviting me here.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. This was interesting as always.
Yeah, for me as well. Thank you for joining us. And I really hope to extend this discussion, maybe with some deeper dive into the breathing part, because Marco is also breathing. He also invited me to this practice as well. So now I introduced breathing as my daily practice. So I would like to hear more about breathing and also about Ashtanga and maybe some other things as well.
Nice.
So
Let's do that.
Really enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, and also what would be interesting to maybe listen to, and hear you to speak about is, I was always inspired by how you consider different sources of knowledge. So when you were speaking about breathing, for example, it's not about what you've learned from pranayama teachers or from within a yoga realm, but also from what you learn from scientific studies and watching sportsmen and, any kind of knowledge that can help your understanding. This kind of holistic approach was always inspiring, so this kind of, let's say,
integrative approach, kind of.
Yeah, like the whole thing, wherever you can learn from, because what's interesting for me is simply understanding how the body works as a machine, and how the nervous system works, and what really happens on a chemical level, and how nutrition, for example, nutrition is an important thing that we didn't mention here.
Yeah.
So we could all go in those directions in future.
Nice. Yeah, let's do that. I look forward to it.
Yeah, but in the meantime, if for anyone watching, if this was inspiring for you to start or improve your practice, I would be happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for having me, and I look forward to future conversations.
Yeah, me too.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Ljudi koji nas slušate, ovo je bilo na engleskom. Sa Tomom ćemo imati još razgovora, vjerojatno isto na engleskom. Lajkajte, subscribeajte, šaljite ljudima koje ovo može interesirati. Evo, to nam je veliki help. Hvala.
Hvala.